Welcome to Membership has its many, many benefits. I'm Emily Galagoski, Research Director for the Membership Puzzle Project at New York University, and I'm here with Amanda Yarnell, Editorial Director for Chemical and Engineering News, Amanda Zamora, Chief Audience Officer for Texas Tribune, hometown hero, Kate Myers, Executive Director for Revenue and Operations, First Look Media, and Deirdre Cower, Head of Product and Design at The Skim. Why are we here? There are so many excellent other sessions that we might be in, and we all think that it's vitally important to be talking about the sustainability of this work. We're here because something is broken, because supporters of independent news are frustrated when we keep our processes and our funding sources closed to them. We're here because trust in institutions, whether it's banking, social media platforms, or news, has never been lower. And we're here because an ad revenue that optimizes for attention over high-quality interaction no longer serves us. And there's a better way to go about this work, to align the interests of our community members with our editorial staff and our publishing efforts. In our work for the Membership Puzzle Project, which is a think tank that focuses on the future of sustainability in news, we think a lot about the social contract between audience members and the sites that serve them. And we make a key distinction here between subscription and membership. That subscription is really product-oriented exchange, and it works fantastically well for a lot of sites. There is no value judgment here. But what our project is really fascinated around is membership in which people give their time, their money, their connections, their professional expertise, their ideas to support a cause that they believe in. Membership in its thickest or most robust forms can represent two-way knowledge exchange between journalists and members. So this isn't just paying lip service to audience engagement, it's actually finding routines and processes to bring it into your work every day. And what this looks like in practice is reporters and editors and development staff and designers actually inviting supporters of their work in. Here you can see City Bureau actually co-designing their membership program alongside their supporters. And you have the good fortune of getting to hear today from sites that are really embarking on new ways of working with their audience members for fun and revenue. Before we get into hearing from these four about how their programs are structured, hearing about retention and revenue, I want to quickly just share a few insights from the past year of our project's work and talking to hundreds of supporters of independent news. Just wanted to share a couple of themes that rely heavily on qualitative research. We hear that sites that stand out from the news of the day are distinct. They have user experiences that let people actually complete the thing they came to your site to do, whether that's pay you, make sense of a complex news topic, or connect with other people on the site. They have integrity, and they keep their focus. So while other sites might be pivoting or chasing the headlines of the day, they have really doubled down and offered coverage that only they can offer. I think Texas Tribune is an excellent example of this. As other regional papers back off of their coverage, let's say of State House topics, Texas Tribune is made a renewed investment in that coverage that news consumers couldn't get anywhere else. A few other things. As membership is emerging as a global practice, it's still very often conflated with subscription, and we're really eager to see more sophistication and more clarity around these terms. And I want to thank you for taking the time to discuss them with us. We know that listening to members can produce deep insight, and there is no substitute for going and meeting your supporters in person if possible. They'll be the ones who can tell you what to offer as far as benefits and what to charge and where they perceive gaps in your coverage. I would love it if today we could tell you, offer X, charge Y, go out and succeed with flying colors. Actually, many of those answers are in your users' minds, and going to them directly is really gonna serve you. Just a few other things. We know that editorial and business-minded staff who work closely with their members are highly in demand. We're seeing more interest in those individuals as thought leaders, and they're very often getting poached in ways that we hadn't previously seen. And with that, I actually want to take a quick scan of the room just to ask, how many of you work in a capacity in which you are working with subscribers, members, donors? You're in some kind of active conversation. That's excellent, thank you. That's really helpful for us to sort of get a sense of who we're working with today. And then finally, the most engaged members, and that can look like anywhere from 1 to 10% of your staff, want to contribute what they know. So here I think about ProPublica's maternal mortality series recently, of really working to understand what are the personal lived experiences and the professional expertise of your readers and people they can introduce you to. Some of the other ways that we see individuals contributing really substantively include participation through comment moderation, technical proofreading, offering detailed skills like video and podcast editing or SEO help or legal help, helping with or hosting live events on the site's behalf, and many other forms of sharing their time and their ideas. With that, I would like to open up, and first I'm going to start actually with a question for Amanda Zamora. We have two Amandas here, but I really want to ask, as we see that many sites are sort of at a moment of thinking through, okay, which direction are we going to go? Texas Tribune has had membership as part of its work for a very long time, and I want to understand why. Why undertake it?
Sure. So before I answer that very good question, I want to actually remind people that the hashtag for this panel is ONA18 membership, and if that's not what's printed, I'm sorry. Let's just go with ONA18 membership, because I don't really know what's printed. Sure. So we are a nonprofit newsroom dedicated to covering politics and policy. We're a single subject niche site. Our mission statement is amazing to me as a journalist who has come up through the ranks as a reporter and digital editor, and someone who, later in my career has come to focus on audience, and particularly audience engagement. And the reason I'm in love with our mission is because it explicitly includes engagement. Our mission is to engage and inform Texans on politics and policy. And that engagement is important because it signals that is, in as much as the reporting that we do and the information that we distribute across all of these platforms, the engagement that we do with our readers is, in and of itself, journalism. And so when you hear Emily talking about listening and the value of listening in terms of being able to cultivate membership revenue with your audiences, I actually back up a step. Our organization does not see listening to members as an exclusive benefit to members. We see listening to our audience as a benefit to us. We have better journalism as a result to listening to our audience, and the revenue follows. So membership is sort of a subset of our overall audience and engagement strategy. It's the final point in our funnel, and it's been really fun to see this program evolve to a part of the pie, right? It's membership at the Texas Tribune. Single or donors below $1,000 account for 5%, and when you include larger gifts above $1,000, it's 10% of our revenue. So membership is not the biggest part of the revenue pie, but it's such an important part, and the reason is because that percentage is a reflection of whether or not we're meeting our mission. The people who give to the Texas Tribune donate because they believe in the importance of credible, nonpartisan journalism as a key ingredient to the civic health of our state and the future of our state. That is why they give. And it's important to us that membership is not just, regardless of the percentage of our overall revenue, but that it is a growing part of the revenue picture and a sustainable part of the revenue picture, because to us it's a really key indicator that we are meeting our mission, that we are doing our jobs, that we are really serving Texans in a way that helps them participate in democracy. And so it means so much more than just the revenue, but when we're doing a good job at engaging and thinking about membership as a community, that we are actively engaging in the journalism through listening, through soliciting their story ideas, through being in constant conversation with them, we see that the revenue follows. And I can tell you a little bit more about how that's changing, but in a nutshell, that's what membership means for us.
Excellent. The SCIM, Deirdre, tell us why membership, why undertake this work?
Totally. So I think taking a step back, I think organically even the way the SCIM was founded was almost with a membership mindset, in that from day one, our founders have always had this obsession with an audience and building a strong, lasting relationship with that audience that transcended just reading a newsletter. And so even when I joined the SCIM, a big foundation of the entire DNA of the company has always been that emotional and deep connection with your readers, well beyond that, 5 minutes in the morning of reading a newsletter and closing the email. And so actually the way our SCIM Ambassador program evolved and came about was very organically. They started the newsletter and realized that as people, just loved the newsletter, but also loved the brand and the mission that it stood for, and kept writing and saying, how can I help? How can I be a part of this? How can I believe in you, I want to support you, let me be a part of this. And so they said, great, share it with 10 people and become a SCIM ambassador. And they just created that completely organically. And that was a few years ago, I believe, and now we're at over 30,000 SCIM ambassadors. They are a truly special program. We call them our boots on the ground, our super users, our focus group, but more importantly, just our audience and the readers that have such a strong relationship to the brand. So I think of this master program in a few ways. So one, in that it is obviously a two-way relationship with our best readers. It is, they have a true emotional connection to the brand in a way that, again, transcends the fact that they read a newsletter every single morning or engage with our other products. They believe in the mission, they believe in the founding story, they are inspired by it, and they connect with one another. So they organize events amongst each other, they help each other. We organize this program called the B List, where they could set goals for the year and actually help each other achieve those goals. So we had teachers who wanted to build a library, having other SCIM ambassadors donate books to it. So many beautiful stories that came out of that again, just evolved from this core relationship that we had built with our audience. And then we try to activate them. So we, especially for the midterm elections this year, my favorite version of this is that we have organized vote captains amongst the SCIM ambassadors to activate people to register and vote this year in the elections at the local level. And we had a conference for them, and we brought them in and kind of connected them with each other to inspire each other to go out and, again, activate their local communities around the election. So it is such a multi-touch relationship that goes, again, well beyond the utility of just reading something and moving on, and has been such a core pillar of our brand and what we stand for.
That's excellent. And I am curious to hear more about the focus
Yes.
groups and how that works. We're talking a lot about closeness and listening and really trying to seek out the knowledge of your community members. This does not mean that those individuals then enjoy special favor in the coverage. And I think there's no one someone would bring. I just wanted to clarify that what we are explicitly not saying is have a reader panel and they guide the editorial. The idea here is actually being beholden to a more diverse and a larger set of stakeholders to make it such that you can serve many more people in the public interest. And with that, I'm gonna turn to Kate to talk about the Intercepts program and actually just quickly call out, there has been a push that they have been doing recently with coverage in Brazil. And I apologize that this is a little bit small, but really want to invite her to talk about even how you talk to prospective members in a human voice, because I think that's crucially important.
Yeah, so I think as where Emily just left the conversation about being holding ourselves accountable, not just to no, go back. I'll come back to those. But holding ourselves accountable not to a small group of funders, but really potentially to a large and diverse set, not just of our audience, but of people who are inspired and are driven to contribute to what we do. One of the things that we address, so I came to First Look in the Intercept a little more than 18 months ago, when I first looked with the mandate of what are we building on among all of our programs to help drive our sustainability and independence. The first product we launched was membership, because we knew, based on the amazing work that the Intercept had done from its founding and the Intercept continued to do editorially, we had a hugely engaged and audience who were driven, who not just reached out to us and said, what should we do, but also took our work and really pushed to use a trite phrase, change the world. The mission of the Intercept is to hold the powerful to account. However, the Intercept itself reveals the truths. The audience has to take that next step to actually pressure for some kind of change. When we looked at all of the different opportunities as to what the driving business model was going to be for our different organizations, we decided to build on that kernel. That individuals cared so much about what we did that they wanted to take our content and do something with it. They also wanted to take our work and do something with it, and wanted to invest back into it. So we decided to put our focus on a model, and sorry to talk so much about business models, but I think we all need to.
That's why we're here.
So a model that really relied on that relationship between the Intercept, its reporters, and its audience, and allowed them to become more deeply involved. We have started with a huge public amount of funding from one donor. We are obviously extremely grateful for that kind of space it gave us to build the Intercept and to build our work to be hugely impactful, which has really given us the runway we need to launch now these kinds of membership programs. So we launched our membership program last year, and we decided to really push and be open to donations anywhere between $1 and if someone wanted to give us a much more significant amount. We put ourselves out there. We've decided anyone who gives us $1 is a member. We have a few, not too many, who have chosen to just give us $1. But we have, in that exchange, we have that sense of community and belonging. Emily brings up the Brazil example, and I think this is sort of a great capsule of the work that we do. We launched the Intercept Brazil around the Olympics, which I should know were in 2016. Thank you. Coming up to the Olympics, partially because Brazil is a really important nexus of political corruption combined with corporate corruption, combined with corporate media corruption that all build on each other and lead to not always the most empowered electorate or public there. We saw the opportunity to take what we were doing with the Intercept and revealing those kinds of truths to hold the power to account and really build that in Brazil. We've been working on that for the last, roughly 2 years, and just a few weeks ago, we launched, coming up to the election at the end of September, beginning of October, we launched our first crowdfunding and membership campaign there. We not just exceeded our crowdfunding goal, we've just about exceeded the financial goal we put on the Intercept Brazil this year in our 4-week process, because we had the opportunity of both one of our founders and our editor-in-chief coming out and saying plainly, in plain, clean language, occasionally with a bullshit thrown in, talking about why it is important, why we do what we do, and why we want our members and our audience to be part of that. I'm also going to talk briefly about some of the reasons that our audience has given us for supporting The Intercept. This encapsulates a lot of the things I've already talked about. The Intercept holds those in power to account. This is a way that I want to be part of this. And this is, in some ways, the way the audience sees to deepen their relationship with us is to become a member. The part here about not feeling like they can find the truth anywhere else, that people come to us and say, I crave the truth that you speak, because I can't find it in my everyday life. When we did our survey with News Revenue Hub, when we launched our membership program, over 80% of the people said that they couldn't find what they could find in The Intercept anywhere else. So we see that pretty often in our membership. This goes into why our audience deepens and supports us, or really what I was saying before about we reveal the truth, but our audience realizes and acknowledges they have a responsibility, not just to vote, but also really to work actively on holding those in power to account and changing the conversation. We need those real facts they believe The Intercept gives them. And then finally, we stand behind the fact that the shit we do is important, and we believe that, we know, not just from our work, but from everything that our members tell us, that what we do is essential for the world.
I'm going to fight my desire just to leave this slide up for the entire rest of the presentation, and invite Amanda Yarnell to talk about what this looks like at Chemical and Engineering News.
So Chemical and Engineering News, like the Texas Tribune, is a single topic niche site. Membership has been part of our DNA from the very beginning. We started in 1923, so 90 plus years of membership, and have always been the glue that holds our larger publishers, the society publisher, together. So we're published by the American Chemical Society, which is the world's largest scientific membership society. So 160-some thousand members these days. And CNN is the most visible and we hear most valued benefit of membership. Chemists look to us for not only what's happening in the world of chemistry to reflect what they studied and what they care about in their careers, but also to hear what their fellow members are doing, what the society is doing for them. It's actually in our mission statement that we are the voice of the ACS.
And I'll just quickly show, can you talk a little bit about some of these, like, you really echo the voice of your members and like even leaning into some chemistry jokes because they're completely appropriate in the pitch that you're making.
We actually worked with our members about the language and how we make our pitch, and we're applauded over and over about making sure that we speak their language. And so you see a lot of that through our membership materials. So membership at ACS and CNN is the most visible and valued, but it's just one of our memberships. So I think we're going to talk maybe a little bit about bundling and things like that later. But members also get access to our scientific journals and our scientific information products, which are really important to their work and to their lives, to career counseling and like free one-on-one career counseling. A lot of things I see other professional societies doing. That's something that we do and CNN participates in as well, and a host of other things. Scientific, we do a lot of events. For example, we have twice yearly events that are a big draw and a big reason that people become members along with CNN.
I would love to talk a layer deeper about how we operationalize this work. You've all laid out a number of different considerations, a really clear mission. Can we talk about how this actually works? Who within your organization works on the strategy side? Are those the same people who are then in touch with members? What does that actually look like day to day?
I can start with that. So I think a big part of kind of like living and breathing audience obsession is that everybody feels like they have to contribute to the success of whether it's a Scrum Master program or just membership with our audience in general in their day-to-day jobs, and all their KPIs are sort of aligned with that. So for example, we undertook this kind of big effort to not only segment and kind of identify specific personas in our audience, but also figure out how we sort of measure loyalty within our audience overall across different tiers and how the Scrum Master program relates to that. And all of our initiatives, whether it's a sales campaign, whether it's a new editorial initiative, whether it's a new product we want to launch, is often kind of assessed against how is this driving loyalty with our members. And so it is very interesting because you just start to sense this like cultural shift away from metrics like page views or eyeballs or kind of like, I like to say kind of like fleeting engagement metrics to how do I measure whether this is actually driving a deeper connection to the brand. Those are also very hard metrics to measure, obviously, and that's why we went through this kind of huge deep dive around how we actually do that. But it is really fascinating coming from very different media organizations to come to a place that actually has our sales team think about this when they're thinking about brands to work with. That is just a total game changer, and it really makes you realize the impact that it can have when, again, every single org in the entire company is living and breathing audience obsession.
And I would imagine that that also comes from the top, right?
Yes,
Top
100%.
Top and bottom.
Yeah.
I'll say we launched with one dedicated staff member who may be sitting on the stage, and some help from, honestly, some people who are here in the audience to help, and one project manager and some really great partners. However, our membership program would absolutely not be successful if we didn't have the full 1,000% commitment of the editorial leadership at The Intercept. As much as we all have jumped in and answered the multitude of questions that our members have had on social media in response to our newsletters, in emails that have come in directly, but we wouldn't have been able to launch, we wouldn't have been able to keep it going and grow it at honestly a much faster clip than we had expected to when we launched it if we didn't have that value and that engagement from the newsroom. Now our membership program is about 4 times as large. It's actually, no, it is 3.5 times as large as I thought it was going to be. And we currently have about 2.5 dedicated staff to it, plus that continued deep engagement with the newsroom. And we're also embedded in the newsroom, which I think helps build that kind of trust and that kind of, we feel that responsibility.
Right, you're not the other person on the business side sitting in a different room.
And that was actually critical for me. That was one of my requirements, despite I am embedded in the newsroom in both Washington, D.C. and in the New York office. That was one of my requirements when I took the job.
Membership at the Texas Tribune used to reside on the business side and report into development. And last year, membership moved on to the audience team, which resides fully in the newsroom. It was actually a little bit of an awkward transition. It raised some questions about what does this mean? How does this impact editorial and who executes what? And it's honestly been one of the best things, I think, at least for me, because we now have someone, engagement is what converts, engagement is also what retains, and there are many people on my team that are working on engagement. Now Sarah Glenn from Chalkbeat has just joined us as of last week, I think. She's been here maybe 2 weeks, and I'm so thrilled that she's with us. She's our loyalty program manager, and her charge is to really develop the membership experience in a way that once we win someone's donation, how do we remind them what that dollar is doing on our behalf and why we're so thankful, and opening up and expanding the channels of communication that keep people with us in the membership program. But overall, we think about membership, it's more of a product approach. The audience team and editorial and engineering and sponsorship and the development teams are always working together to think about how do we maximize all of our effort to maximize revenue and improve the member experience. And I also think In terms of culture shift, we have a donations Slack channel, which I love during drive time. It just is constantly pinging, and it's been fun to watch more reporters, frankly, get into that channel and get excited when they see not only the donor's name and the dollar amount, but what encouraged them to give. And it's great because they're in there and they're seeing people that they know. They're seeing themselves cited as a reason for a person's contribution. And so there is one person whose sole focus is their job is to be obsessed with members and how to really define that experience. But it's also a very cross-functional approach to building the program.
I would say at CNEN, it's very similar. The person who owns a responsibility for growing membership audience lives on the business side, but they are part of an audience team that has very intentionally been built across our market, the sort of where our marketing automation skills live on the business side, but also onto the editorial side where engagement really lives, because I think it is really critical. I think it's telling for us that I'm the editorial director, so obviously membership matters to editorial. But again, I think that has to do with a lot of the fact that many of our writers and reporters are actually also members, myself included. So I think that actually does reflect the value that people place in it, that they're willing to do that themselves.
Sort of a neat way to think about it. So membership in which your staff are
You
members,
care enough.
and that is the fullest expression. The people you pay are the fullest expression of what it means to belong to the organization.
I'm very proud about telling my staff that I'm a member, a longtime member since grad school. So.
I think one thing that's really important to highlight there is also the idea that you know these people. Like there's a familiarity and a humanity when we talk about this
You
work.
understand their needs and what they want and what they might expect and how they want to be told about it.
Right, like being in regular dialogue that isn't just, this is one crowdsourced reporting initiative and then we're not gonna do this for another year. You're actually creating sort of a regular drumbeat and routine for listening and engagement. And I think Texas Tribune Festival is an excellent example of this. I would like to talk just briefly about live journalism, because I think this is an important piece that really has the opportunity to show what you do, not just talk about it. And I wonder if I can invite you to speak to that.
Sure. So actually, I'm so thrilled to be here today on Monday. We actually kick off our fall member drive. And it's very exciting for us because this particular campaign represents a pivot point in our membership program. We usually have our fall, and actually let me back up a step and describe a little bit about how we fundraise. We have two sort of tentpole campaigns, one in the spring and one in the fall. We're not public radio, but we love to rally people around membership. We're slightly less annoying, but try to be as in your face as possible in as many ways as we can. But then we try to sort of also even out where we will do, we ask you routinely now in our stories. Every story page has a membership ask, and we do crowdfunding appeals around particular editorial initiatives. But events are also a really great opportunity to integrate membership into the broader Tribune experience and to showcase the member community. And we're using Texas Tribune Festival this year in particular to kind of signal some of the changes and improvements that we're so excited about introducing in the program. So for the first time at Festival this year, our members really are our VIPs. They get priority access to our keynote panels. So again, expanding concrete benefits, not that cost us a lot of money to fulfill, but just leverage the great experiences that we're already cultivating. I have a list here because they're literally brand new benefits. What are our other benefits? We're also integrating sponsor perks, which is awesome. And April Hinkle, who's a badass and wonderful at bringing in sponsor dollars, has done a tremendous job of finding alignment with our sponsors to introduce surprise and delights for members who don't even know that they're going to be identified at Festival, and they're going to wind up with these awesome perks, these gifts. Exclusive programming. taking membership on the road. You know, the biggest share of our members right now are in Austin. Texas Tribune Festival is in Austin, but we don't want you to have to be in Austin to feel loved by the Texas Tribune. And so we have up to 60 events across the entire state of Texas every year. So why not carve out a little bit of one-on-one time with our members while we're already on the road to give them, make them feel special, but also, again, listen to what they have to say. Those are just a few of the things that we're sort of planning on rolling out. And then, of course, there is going to be swag. And I know that eventually we were going to get to this topic. You know, swag is not the reason that people donate, and nor should it be. The journalism and the mission is the primary reason. But man, it is a great way to kind of keep people, remind people about why they joined. And frankly, in the same way that, like, I'm obsessed with the SK Ambassador program. Like, we want members to be evangelizing on our behalf. I want to see our brand everywhere. I want to see it across the entire state of Texas. I want to see it on, like, you know, buildings and, you know, street lamps all across Austin. And the other cool thing that we're introducing with this campaign is our first step in this ambassador direction, where members can fundraise on our behalf. And those, we have another sort of sponsor integration with a great incentive, South by Southwest badges for, you know, members who fundraise on our behalf. So it's really exciting. I mean, the SKIM, frankly, has been a really incredible model on how to activate your most loyal audience. And we're thinking about how does that really apply to our audience, and how can we, you know, find alignment within editorial and sponsorship and the membership team, and we're super excited. Events in particular just wind up being this great kind of intersection of all of those things in terms of the journalism being expressed in real time. And frankly, membership aside, I think our events are really evolving also to be more than coming to an event and listening to Evan Smith or listening to an elected official, but we're designing events, frankly, to be much more centered around engagement, where the primary purpose of that event, we're doing a more roundtable series. We're about to launch a whole brand of events called Community Conversations, where the point of the event is for you as our community to get together, to convene around a topic, and you tell us what we should be reporting about, what we should be thinking about as we head into an election cycle or a legislative session. So it's just this great intersection of the things that we already do well, but trying to make sure that members within that feel special.
I think it also goes a long way to demystifying the work of journalism. I've been really struck by sort of low levels of literacy around how the business of news gets done. And these are smart, professional people. I think as an industry, we really have made our work quite opaque, and this is one way to begin to restore or provide some clarification and opportunities for involvement. One of the things that I really like that you shared with SK Ambassadors is that initial ask being, tell 10 friends. That's concrete, and that's something that doesn't mean now I'm signed up to volunteer every Wednesday night for eternity. Can you talk a little bit about how do you right-size the ask, knowing that some people are light on time and other people have much more that they can offer in that domain?
Yeah, totally. Well, I'll caveat that we're definitely rethinking it. You know, I think that was our initial ask. I think we're now in the process of thinking through how we evolve that and have it be more reflective of all the different ways you could potentially kind of contribute to the SKIM. But I do want to touch on a little bit of what Amanda mentioned that's related to this, which is swag is fascinating because it is not about, you know, you get this like token that makes you feel like you got a physical product to make up for like your contribution to the company or the organization. We believe that whether it's swag or other things, like we want our loyal super fans to want social currency and to have this like pride in saying that I am a part of the SKIM. And that is like this North Star for us that, especially as the group grows and evolves, you gotta keep holding on to that. And that, going back to your original question, is actually why I believe having referrals to be kind of the entry point to start, whether it was 10, 15, or 5, was so powerful. powerful, because what it really did was it transacted on this desire to be proud of being part of something, to say, I want to share this to the world. I want to bring you in and have you experience the joy that I feel when I'm part of the SCIM. And again, I think that starting with that was actually a lot more powerful in cultivating that community of superfans than it might have been if we had actually started with more of a financial transaction, because it really matched this like social currency element of the program. And you know, to touch on what you were saying, though, I think we'll evolve that, because, you know, once you hit that 10 I think is a good kind of intro barrier. You know, most of our audience, they can share it on Facebook and, you know, get that initial group of people in. Beyond that is fascinating. I mean, we have some SCIM masters who are at thousands now. We have people who are in like your hundreds, and figuring out, you know, what even the levels are within that community is so interesting, you know. And again, it's not about just finding like the right, you know, reward or piece of swag for these levels. It's about saying, what does it mean when somebody has brought in thousands of people into this program? And we actually consider them like an extension of our company in so many ways.
It becomes like a really fascinating look at motivation,
Yes.
means of participation, and also scale.
Yes.
And one thing I would like to talk about is revenue, which we haven't really sort of like dug in like into the numbers and what this really looks like. Mary Walter Brown from News Revenue Hub is in the room, and I really support a recommendation that she and her team make of having anywhere from 4 to 6 ongoing regular revenue streams as sort of a healthy way to stay focused but not be all in on one revenue source. Can each of you give sort of a sense of, beyond direct audience revenue, what are other ways that your work is funded? And especially if there's anything that your site has abandoned, that would be interesting to know too. Amanda, we'll start with you.
Okay, so membership for us accounts for about a little more than a third of our costs, right? Covers what we do. Institutional, call it subscription or whatever institutional offering to us is another, roughly a third, a pretty significant amount, which really matters to us and we see as a growing part of our future. And then the rest is advertising of various kinds, all the ways, including most recently we launched, I think like many places, a custom content studio. Ours is obviously focused on science, for science marketers.
Ours is, I'll just be super simple, but you can go to texastribune.org/2025 and look at our strategic plan, which talks all about how audience and membership fit into the bigger picture, but it also includes a breakdown of our revenue. But I would say it's like half philanthropy and major gifts and membership, and then the other half corporate. That includes digital sponsorship, events sponsorship, some earned revenue.
So for First Look in the Intercept, the goal for us is to drive our primary revenue stream from individual giving. What that means in our context is the nonprofit side of First Look. That's where we expect the lion's share of the work to come there, or the revenue to come from there. The rest coming from a few other earned pieces that we are going to put together. The unique part about First Look is that we work in partnership with a for-profit. We know that part of the work that we do at The Intercept, and as well as some of our Press Freedom Defense Fund and others, we don't have a full expectation that we would be self-sustainable entirely on our own. Neither did our funder and founder. So the idea of partnering us with a for-profit that eventually will throw off enough profit to reinvest in us and then be self-sustaining.
So currently we have 4 revenue streams, so we definitely believe in diversified revenue, as I think a lot of people do as well. So we have an advertising business, we have a subscription business, affiliates, product recommendations, books. We're the #1 way to sell books to female millennials, and then a licensing business as well.
Can I just add something to that? I think the idea, it is healthy and important to have multiple revenue streams. However, there is a certain value that comes from really focusing your resources on what you think is the most valuable, and what you think is the most related to your strategy. I think that it can be difficult in journalism to feel like you have to hit every trend to a certain extent in ways that you are making money without realizing how much effort it actually takes to bring all of that in. I remember rejecting some licensing contracts last year because, as I said, they would bring in, I think I said last year at ONA, dozens of dollars, yet the amount of work to actually make them happen was going to be too much. I think that when you think about building an overall revenue picture, you want to make sure you put your resources and your energy on the things that are going to be most valuable to you. And taking a look hard at what your value proposition is and really leaning heavily into that. I have an article that I'll share on Twitter afterwards about nonprofits specifically and how that strategy works for them.
What I hear in that also is a call for clarity.
Yes.
Both internally and externally, that if your team is running around chasing dozens of dollars in 100 different domains, that is going to make for some chaotic messaging externally. I would love to know whether it's about communication or other cautionary tales. One thing that maybe you would want to leave today's participants with around, even it can be a gaffe, it can be something that you attempted in this work where you realized, actually, we need to have a clearer way to communicate how we're selling this mission. I do think there's big value or great value in being able to be really honest with one another about what we're attempting that hasn't worked as well as we had hoped.
I'll just say authenticity and voice matter quite a lot. I think it can be, particularly if the news side and the fundraising side are far apart, that the fundraising arm really starts residing in a marketing speak space, and where they're prioritizing revenue goals and the most efficient way to get to goal for this campaign to the next campaign. And I think when that is the driving framework for that work, it shows in the creative, in the campaign, and in the writing. And for us, I think we've really, and I love that our newsroom is so accessible for all of this stuff, but it really does matter the extent to which our editorial voice and sensibility is really reflected in the way that we execute campaigns, even though we're leveraging all of the best marketing tactics and techniques, right? It really needs to breathe, speak, sound like the Texas Tribune's journalism.
I love that.
I would absolutely. We've had exact same experience, and when we looked at the slides earlier, you saw, how we navigated that. And I think for a long time we just, didn't have them working together. And this is an example where we learned that lesson during, user testing of it, and quickly corrected. And I think we've seen the results almost immediately. It's no surprise, really.
And the other thing, just like a sidebar that's fascinating to me, is to start to see, you were talking about the distinguishing subscriptions business from membership, and it's been fascinating for me to watch these big news brands that are trying to get subscription dollars and embrace this sort of mission-driven language that's, I don't know, it's fascinating.
I'll just add, I think being the product nerd here, I think what we've definitely learned is is kind of a relentless focus on whether or not you're actually driving user value is extremely important. It actually even relates to, not chasing revenue dollars, and you can rationalize anything. And I think being very true to yourself, whether it's being authentic or just being true to the actual value that you're driving and whether or not this is a true benefit to somebody is extremely important. It's very, very easy to put together a bundle or an offering and spin some great marketing speak around it, and at the end of the day, a user might not actually be able to say, I get this, I pay X and get Y, or this is why I use this, or this is why I subscribe to this. And that might have some short-term revenue gains, but ultimately it's not going to be a long-term strategy.
Let me also add to the conversation of failure. I think there's two strains I think that we, launching the Intercept membership program, we hit. First was the chance for disruption in the middle of your campaign. We had a very large news event happen 2 weeks into our campaign where the government arrested a source. and who was alleged to be our source. That has certainly been a thread through our whole membership campaign, how we do our work. And I think being one of the ways that we struggled was how to be agile enough with this brand new business to respond to that. The second thing that we've struggled with is, to be honest, some of the problems and the failures of scale. One of the questions as we go into our planning for next year, our operations coordinator, who also works on events for us, told me yesterday and said, "Look, the sheer number of member questions and issues and everything, he goes, I'm worried some of these are falling through the cracks. And the thing that we have to do is meet these member needs because they're the ones that we want to focus on." So we've been struggling a bit with how to keep all of those plates spinning when we are trying to provide a high level of service and engagement. So I think scaling the kind of things that we know we want for membership has always been a challenge, and having the tools for that.
That's right, and I think that distinction where these are models that really shouldn't scale beyond their ability to serve supporters, also with the idea, and we were talking about this earlier, that designing these programs with your most loyal users in mind, I think has a really virtuous effect on everyone else that you serve. And these sites absolutely represent, there may be paid offerings, but it allows the core news product to be freely available in the public interest, and that's a really key differentiator. I want to hear questions that you have, so please go ahead and make your way to the mic if you have questions for these panelists. And just want to underscore 3 really important themes that they've shared here, which is this importance of production value parity that both Amandas spoke to, the idea that any of the membership messaging sounds like the rest of the coverage. It sounds authentic, not like, oh, we just hired a messaging and branding firm to write this for you. The importance of user testing, which you mentioned, it can be so hugely invaluable, even if it's a group of 10 people that you're sharing the work with before it launches. And this agility and scale bit, I think, is just hugely important, so thank you for that. First question, please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Greg Fitzgerald from the Christian Science Monitor, and I just wanted to actually share what we're doing during the last year. We've got 2 different types of subscription models. We have a print magazine and just launched a new subscription service last year, which is doing pretty well. But we wanted to figure out, it's not so much create a membership program, but we brought in a consultant to have us deal with basically our best subscribers, which he has termed the whales. What a whale is they subscribe for $135 a year to the print magazine, another $110 to the digital product. We have a gift program. They're giving gifts to friends and families and everything else. So we bring these whales together, and we this spring basically wanted to come up with a campaign of how to reach other subscribers with language. So we would bounce things off of these whales. What is the Monitor to you? What is our coverage? What are we doing best? What do we do this? What do we do that? And came up with, on a whiteboard, a lot of these things, and then we went over that with our editorial staff to come up really with some real clear language on how we deal with it. And now we also use them to give us their sense on, we're doing a podcast. What do you think of the idea of the podcast? We're doing other special events. We don't have the staff to do big events, so we're doing webinars and online events. But they're the ones that get invited over and over again, and it's really helped a lot. So it's more just what we're doing to share. Our consultant, by the way, he wrote a book called A Member is Worth 1,000 Visits. His name's Rob Ristagno. Great book.
Excellent, thank you. Save the whales. I see Andy from Center for Investigative Reporting, and just want to quickly say, or invite him to say, a little bit about Reveal Insiders, which is a similar sort of basically like user feedback gathering group that is sort of this always-on group, 500 people who have opted in to be contacted, and it could be newsletter tone testing or other requests. And the idea is that we could use your feedback by end of day tomorrow, and this becomes a great way to very quickly generate feedback on work in progress. Is that an in the back?
Hi, Laura Miko from Harvard Business Review. I'm curious how you all think about multiple memberships and what size membership is correct, whether you think about how many communities it is that you're really engaging with, and whether those are different membership groups.
I think we've found that there are different, all right, so we have launched now, this has been what's caused Mary Brown to get some gray hair, but we have now launched the potential for 5 different membership programs. We launched our Intercept membership program, we launched Intercepted, our podcast membership program. I referenced the Brazil program. We have a few others we've essentially programmed in but haven't necessarily launched. What we found is what we thought we were going to have with multiple membership programs is we were going to be able to double dip to a certain extent and have our core members join multiple programs. We had much less overlap between our podcast membership program and our general Intercept membership program, which told us about the distinction of those two audiences, which we think is really great. Brazil, so far, it's only been a few weeks. We think the 1,000+ people that joined in Brazil are relatively distinct, but we did have a high percentage of our current audience contributing to the Brazil campaign. So I think in general, we have different motivations for people being part of our audience. There are different segments, but we are managing a few different membership programs. We've generally standardized the benefits or such in between them, and when we think about membership, we think about them as a collective whole.
Yeah, we too have different levels of membership, and I think although they tend to be distinct pools, right? We have graduate student members, graduate student members, and then we have full members, et cetera. Often people will travel from one of those memberships to another, so I think that's something really important, just to remember that somebody could associate with you for a really long time, but not necessarily need the same things from you at every point in their career. So that's actually something we think a lot about that we don't have time to go through here.
Consumer Reports membership is very similar, that someone needs it at a particular life moment and then takes a couple of years off.
Membership for us, for the most part, is one distinct cohort. We do have now, which is new as of this campaign, distinct benefits at different levels. But we also are introducing the opportunity to become a member by volunteering and starting to open up the world of membership. Like, it is not just about your dollar contribution, that you can contribute in other meaningful ways, and I think we're gonna learn a lot by starting to understand what motivates one versus the other and how do we engage people differently. So right now the answer is no, but I can see us sort of evolving how we communicate based on what we learn from this new sort of volunteer to become a member program.
I love that idea of giving and then also paying in participation.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Amanda with the Marshall Project. I just wanted to talk Turkey, just quick and dirty numbers. I know I heard like half of revenue and kind of different pie charts. In the spirit of transparency, our membership program is just launched just about a year and a month ago. We've got 2,000 members. We've got a subscriber base of about 40,000 on our email products. And we brought in revenue of about 300,000 in the first year. We've probably got pledges and commitments of about 750. So I'm just kind of curious, especially as we're thinking of scale, looking at a national organization, and as we're starting to think about how do events and that in-person play into things, just kind of curious of what numbers you guys look at and think of.
I will tell you that sounds awesome, and you guys are kicking ass.
Go Marshall Project.
We're trying to grow 10% year over year in terms of revenue. I'm hoping we'll get to about 500,000 this year, and we'll have 45. We're already at 4,500 members now, but I know that we're not converting to our full potential, and that's part of the reason why we're really focused on this and really growing the sort of middle of the funnel in terms of our email lists, and really making it more clear what it means to be a member, because we want to grow the program. I mean, if we're really going to match the growth at the top of the funnel, actually it needs to be even more aggressive than that, but we're going to be conservative in our goal setting until we start to see that happen.
I'll say too, we're at about 13,500 members at the moment, having launched a little less than, 16 months ago. We hit our 5,000 member goal or had our 10,000 member, just about hit our 10,000 member goal last year, and expect that we've been focusing this year on retention. And we expect revenue-wise, I had a goal of 1.25 this year. I'm not supposed to up my projections unless I'm going to go up by more than $500,000. But I don't have any question that we're going to hit that this year. We have aggressive growth goals over the next couple years, partially because we've been investing in growing our email list. So we were at 80,000 or something when I started. We're at like 140 now. We have more work to do, sort of catching that, closing the funnel between the visitors and the and people that subscribe.
I'll add, so we have 7 million in our total readership. We have 30,000 Skim ambassadors in the program. I unfortunately can't share our paid subscription numbers, just gonna say that, but overall it's been a huge success for us. I think one of the big learnings for us from a numerical standpoint has been definitely not, shoot for the biggest numbers up front before you understand how sticky this thing is and how to evolve it over time. Subscription, membership, all of these types of models are a long game, and I think making sure you really understand the value prop and that stickiness over time and what's gonna cause that to create that stickiness is a better strategy than just like shoving people in the funnel through paid and all sorts of tactics up front, because it's a short-term play.
Just from our perspective, to add quickly, so we're at 164,000, I believe, right now, members, and for us, I think the goal is retention, obviously, and then if you've saturated the U.S. market, that's a big challenge for us. How do you look elsewhere? How do you build a value proposition for people who maybe can't attend your events and some of these other tactics that we've used? And then how do you, at the very bottom of the funnel, which for us is like you majored in chemistry as an undergrad, that means you didn't hate organic chemistry, that means you should love us. Like, how do we get that person to stick around with us? I think those are the challenges for us at the stage that we are with membership.
And that suggests to me also clarity about knowing who you're for. I was talking the other day to a news site called Documented that covers immigration topics, and I loved the clarity with which they were able to say there are 3 groups that we want to grow with: immigration staff and information advocates, concerned citizens, and most important, stakeholders, people who are in this process, and that's the hardest one for us to reach. The clarity with which they were able to spell that out is something that I would love to see more sites be able to do. I'm just going to keep taking questions until we get kicked out of this room. Let's go to the back.
Thank you. I'm curious about the very beginning of your membership programs. How did you find messaging worked at the beginning to grow these programs? Like, was it incredibly slow and then just took off? Did you adjust your messaging? What did you think would be more effective than it was, and vice versa? How did you get people into the funnel? That kind of stuff.
That sounds like a full-day workshop. Any high-level thoughts?
Yeah.
Too young to remember the beginning of our membership.
I wasn't there.
Since I was, to be honest, we had a huge advantage because the Intercept had existed for so long, and we had a hugely primed, engaged audience. So we put out an authentic appeal that significantly overperformed, and that's where we've built from there. To be honest, we haven't changed our approach in the 18 months. Sometimes we put out a 1,500-word appeal, because you try editing Glenn Greenwald down below that. And what we found is, surprisingly, those work. Those shouldn't work by any metrics that live out in the world, but in the appeal, in what we are getting at, it is still working for us. We acknowledge that we are going to have to pivot and shift. Right now, we are converting the segment that we have now, And we've actually, as we've been adding people to the email list, we've been tracking how we've gotten them and what interests they have, because we've been doing some targeted Facebook ads. So we want to see how some of those different segments perform.
Can I add a quick thing? Because I do think it is interesting that you had Glenn as part of your appeal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like a general, like, organizational thing. Are you using?
It's not for me, no.
Right. Are you all using individual, like, reporters, people that are in bylines?
Yes, we have reporter notebooks that are dispatches basically to members that kind of go behind the story. Yep.
Thank you.
Edwin.
Hey, first, two comments. First, Emily forgot to mention that there's a fabulous guide to audience revenue and engagement written by you and Elizabeth Hansen of Shorenstein, and I urge everybody to go to Columbia Journalism School and read your report. It's really terrific.
I will pay you later. Thank you.
Second, there are still thousands of news sources for whom print is an important part of their revenue mix. But they've been largely left out. The CRMs don't handle them. Most magazines can't engage their readers because they don't even know who they are, because they've sent in little cards to some fulfillment center out in Iowa or California. So there's no way to connect the databases. We're working with 6 other magazines, American Heritage. We're American Heritage working with Washington Monthly, Texas Observer, New Republic, putting together the first open source media management system for a CRM to include all of the complicated stuff for labeling and reporting and compliance with advertiser. I mean, a lot of stuff that print people need. So that'll be in this. It's an open source system. I have information on it if anybody wants to know more about it. First of its kind, first CRM that's open source.
And a really important gap that you're filling. Thank you. In the back.
Hi, my name is Adriano. Emily, we spoke over the phone a couple of months ago. I'm the co-founder of Pactio. It's a platform that is trying to apply some of these like similar concepts of the membership model to a platform where any journalist, even a freelance journalist, can actually take advantage of in terms of benefit for, like as you guys were saying, like the relationship with the audience, but also revenue. So just meant to share this and say thank you so much for this. Learned a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. If you were, this is a question for the organizations that didn't start with membership at its core. What were the conversations like internally to decide to switch or move or add a membership model? What kinds of, was there any resistance to anything like that? And what kinds of resources did you end up either having to add, reallocate? What did that shift look like internally?
I was going to say, you have our FAQ on the in your slide deck, don't you? Because we had here we go. We were founded with a very large public donation from Piero Midiar, and we had a large number of people inside the organization say, why the H would anyone want to give us any money? And so including on the night before we launched the program. And I think overcoming, this comes down to my background as a product person, because my general reaction to that is we have an opportunity to try. We believe, like, I can only convince you so much with data and with experience. At this point, we just have to pilot this and we just have to try. So I think it took some, I took advantage of the fact that I was new. I took advantage of the fact that it was spring of 2017, and we were in a unique position politically as well as in the organization. So I used that momentum to help overcome, to bulldoze those objections and push it forward with the argument of we need to see if this is going to work in order for our sustainability. Yeah. Yes, it was an MVP.
Steve Waldman with Report for America. I wonder if you could get even more granular on the topic of how much you communicate with your members and what type of communication you do. So once they are members, how frequently, what's the type of communication that seems to work best? And then I suppose before they become members, if there's anything to know about the nature of what kind of newsletters or email lists translate best into members.
Great question.
Quick and dirty. We talk to them at a minimum of once a month in terms of email, and when their membership is, if they're sustaining, coming up for renewal. I'd like to expand that conversation, but I think we need to do some testing and research before we commit to what's the right space for sort of a more fluid conversation. Obviously, we're speaking to them at events and in other sort of ways as it relates to particular events or stories. And in terms of acquisition or converting from non-members, email is the biggest converter for our, for the most part. And we see a lot of, the majority of that happens around our drives. But there's also sort of a newer member, I think, that we're seeing more regularly that comes from social, where people are just really engaged in a particular story. The biggest spike we had in members, which we that time we thought was an anomaly, was in 2013 when the Wendy Davis filibuster captured the nation's attention, and it was our first real experiment and success with crowdfunding. And that trajectory now, we're seeing maybe that's not an anomaly. We saw the biggest, we're at a record for sort of new donors and money raised for crowdfunding just this summer with our Families Divided crowdfunding campaign. And so in terms of acquisition, it's actually interesting. We're starting to see more conversion actually through social, and it'll be interesting to see how that affects retention over the long term and what keeps those people, or if we want to spend as much effort actually at keeping those people versus folks who are converting off of our core lists.
I'll just add, so we do email comms on a weekly basis, but because our membership is so community-driven, we have a private Facebook group where we have very specific programming there. I think the fun part that has actually made it very sticky and had this like emotional connection is that our founders will post just in there a lot and just to kind of engage in organic conversation. So they'll go on the Today Show and they'll post some behind the scenes things being like, hey, like we had a rough morning, how's your morning going? And it just creates this like really intimate connection that isn't like overly programmed, that kind of layers on top of the actual programming that we have, that I think has had a lot of success for us.
On that note, I'll just quickly add, Day Correspondent, which is our partner newsroom out of Amsterdam, people can sign up to follow individual correspondents, and the frequency is weekly. So the expectation is that those individual correspondents are talking with members of their knowledge communities, even if it's what else should be on my reading list for this topic that I'm currently investigating. Other thoughts?
We interact with our members on a weekly basis, actually a twice weekly basis. They get a newsletter from us, but they also get a print magazine from us as well. So it's a lot of work. But we also, like when we have these very elaborate campaigns that when we get a member, they get some information about the benefits of membership spaced over like a couple months, and we see that that's actually like a place where it's been really important, and we're now trying to apply some of the lessons that we learned recently about changing our language and really aligning it with how the editorial team talks to them, really bleeding that into our both our acquisition emails and then also the thank you for joining, you're great, because I think that really matters, right? So it doesn't feel so like a transaction.
One small thing to add to this, we're at about we've been aiming for a monthly cadence. We'd like to make that more. We answer about 1,000, if not more, individual emails every month too. The one area that hasn't come up in this conversation so far is as we add someone to the next level up in the funnel on the email list, we put a lot of legwork. It took a lot longer for us to get it ready, but we put a lot of legwork into our welcome series, onboarding people there, and have had a really good conversion. And I think other News Revenue Hub members have found a huge amount of conversion from that welcome series, converting those new subscribers to members.
Last question.
Hi, I'm Key from Mindshift. We are a site that focuses on learning. It's been particular for K-12 educators. Our audience, I think, has a lot of knowledge to share with one another. They're not exactly, writing monthly subscriptions for $50 and more because they're struggling to get paid in the first place. So I'm curious to know, when it comes to sharing knowledge and having knowledge sharing as a membership approach, like how would you see that?
At least in our context, I'm a little bit wary of making that type of contribution contingent on membership, because I want everyone to feel like they can contribute their feedback and their ideas and their stories and their tips and all of those things. And so I think one possibility could be, if you're trying to cultivate membership and also extract knowledge, is maybe the inviting people to share their knowledge is a great entry point for building a list that you can re-engage around membership, right? But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think just building on that, we've had a lot of conversations not wanting to have exclusive content or exclusive paths for members to communicate. I would say, I think the tools that are out there for sort of allowing people to share that information, I think share that information and even be rewarded with membership are potentially difficult to scale. I do think it comes down to how you frame what your asks are. So I wouldn't just say, hey, I wouldn't just say, hey, you can say we are open to your information, you're open to your knowledge to help drive what we're doing, but I would actually think about it at a deeper level than just answer this question for me and contribute to this thing, but actually a little bit closer to what Day Correspondent does, of saying, here is the topic area we're in, here are the storylines we are really driving towards, or here are some questions and thoughts that we have. What can you share about this? And then potentially see how you can integrate that into the coverage.
I think that's,
because I was just going to say, I think it works well for what you are doing, because I think you have, specifically with Mindshift, you have a deeper sense of expertise among your audience, not just interest.
One little illustration of this for us actually is a really great example, I think. We've been doing this anyway, as we've sort of revamped how we think about engagement as a journalistic enterprise. Alex Samuels is our community reporter, and she now routinely invites the audience, particularly when there's a big breaking story. She'll crowdsource a story. We did it in Harvey and crowdsourced a list of resources for people who are in need of assistance and people who wanted to offer assistance. We did it this year around the Families Divided. Just simple, compiling a list of organizations that were mobilizing to help people. That has not only been the most viewed story on our site this year, it's one of 2 stories that have driven the most donations. So.
And very often we will hear supporters say, I know that the reporters have done the work. Actually point me where I should go next. So almost, I think it's taking a page from solutions journalism that works really, really effectively.
Yeah, we do something very similar in that we community members, they don't have to be members, but lots of them are members because I think they value this ability. They're able to write in letters about chemical accidents or unexpected results that they got in the lab when they mixed this and that. I'm simplifying things dramatically here. But that's information that's not recorded anywhere in the scientific literature, and there's just nowhere else to get it. And it's become this incredibly important thing over the last few years where members were writing that information, and we seeing how valuable that was and hearing people say, this is one of the reasons we are members, this is one of the reasons that we decided to invest in you. We doubled down on that, and we've really spent a lot more time. We've assigned a reporter to the chemical safety beat. We've done a bunch of investigations, getting information that maybe no one could write in about, for example. Sometimes, if it happens to you, it's a near miss, nobody died, you'll write in and it's a community service thing, but if somebody passed away in the incident, that can make it into a legal thing and you're not able to share it, and that's a place where we can help. And we've found people will, you don't have to be a member to be able to do that. People will all of a sudden say, oh, I do want to part with my money because I see what you're doing here.
That idea of offering a place for stories that wouldn't otherwise get shared, and then also having that connect to the editorial, I think is just excellent. The last thing that I'll say on this is, we're not talking about membership as like the TSA pre-check line where now you paid and now all of a sudden we really care about what's front of mind for you. Again, it's this idea that it's
virtuous effects, being clearer about your process and how people can contribute to it. The last thing that I will mention, just really quickly, if you are interested in the topic that Amanda shared earlier about clarifying business model differences, Kate and I wrote a piece for Pointer earlier this week on exactly this topic. And we know that the community members we serve are besieged with different subscription and membership and donation options. And we really feel like it's a moment to reflect our collective memory on the distinctions between them. So I would invite you to check that out. Please be in touch with us with questions and ideas. Thank you so much to our panelists, and have a great afternoon.
Thanks for sticking around, you guys.
Yeah, really, that was.
All right, we need a picture before we do of the fashion.
It was so nice to meet you.